In this special roundup episode of Nevada Realtors Today, we're bringing you the best of the best. High-impact insights from our most downloaded shows. From navigating the fallout of the NAR settlement to leveraging smarter tech and data, we're diving into the strategies top real estate pros are using to stay sharp and get paid. You'll hear from RESO CEO Sam DeBoard, Next Home CEO James Dwiggins, and Housing Wire President Diego Sanchez. If you're ready to cut through the noise and future-proof your business, this one's for you. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Nevada Realtors Today, your place for timely updates on the news and trends that matter to realtors in the Silver State. And now let's join your Nevada Realtors President, Brandon Roberts, and Nevada Realtors CEO, Tiffany Banks, for today's episode of Nevada Realtors Today.
How do you envision the role of data in real estate evolving over like the next, let's just say 5 to 10 years?
I wish I could give a definitive answer on that. I don't like to make projections.
Looking for crystal ball predictions these days.
I think people like to say data is the new oil, and whether you believe that to its fullest extent or not, it's clear that our entire lives are shifting toward data-driven tools that create efficiency, that make things faster, easier, quicker, bring us insights. Companies are not pouring billions of dollars into these AI systems and training them on massive data sets if they didn't see that that was the future for really all businesses, consumer facing and B2B sort of businesses. So it'll certainly become more valuable. It'll be interesting to see how well, as an industry, we continue to have the rules to ensure that that data is accurate, which is the role of the MLS right now, and is the role of the association in terms of roster data right now, but still allow it to be transparent and be accessible. And there was a traditional sort of default to it's ours, it's valuable, protected, which is good. It should be protected, but it doesn't get valuable unless it's used. So we've got to have ways to appropriately use that to give value back to the creators as well. But to fully maximize its value, it's got to be out in the world. And the rest of the world has to recognize this is the most accurate and valuable data source there is in the real estate industry. And I think there are some, there's some movement in that direction from the industry. There has been for a long time, and we need to continue moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm. I think this is really, really helpful when thinking about, like why MLS exists, right? Because I think that that's been a question throughout some of the settlement. And it's not just about that compensation field. It's about much more. And I think that you're actually bringing to light a lot of that, which I didn't even quite think about before we went on this podcast today, Brandon, but actually the importance of sharing that data, the collaboration, not having to redo, like you're saying, the wheel from like start to finish. If there's already like information that exists and you're able to share it, like it's I'm actually very, very impressed with hearing how all this works.
If you travel to another country, which we now do international MLS forums and work with a lot of folks who lead associations or brokerages in other countries, they all want an MLS system. It might be a little different. There'll be different legal requirements. Maybe they won't do compensation the same way. That's fine. What they all want is the ability to transfer data between brokers and have the rules that make that work well, because everyone has the ability to transfer data between brokers today, and it doesn't work well in most countries. The portals have the same listing listed 5 times at 3 different prices. It's already been sold, or it might never have even been a listing.
Wow.
Without those rules of the MLS system, it just doesn't work the way it should.
Brandon, do you have any final questions or thoughts for Sam?
Well, kind of a statement. You mentioned that everyone was protective of their data. People didn't want to really let the MLS data out. I think it's more important not that you protect it or shield it. It's kind of how you use the data. So, I guess the question would be how can data analysis help us in understanding and predicting market trends in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we need to see the value of the data for one thing. As you said, it's got to be used in the right way so that we can ensure that it's the right data to make that analysis happen. We've got new initiatives now where MLS data is being resold, not to other MLSs or brokers, but to financial institutions under a strong license, under the permission of the brokers and the MLS marketplace. And it's starting to put a value, a price on what that data is worth. And I think that increases the ability of brokers and of MLSs to invest more in better data and broader data. We record just so much information in a listing, but there are so many more data sets we could bring into the MLS space to help with that analysis. We see these companies coming in and augmenting MLS data with flood information, insurance information, climate information, risk zones, all kinds of environmental data that can sort of augment that and allow us to do better analysis than just here are the square footage, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, and the price that it's sold for. So as long as that MLS is sort of the cornerstone of the accurate data, and we can continue to bring in insights that agents and brokers have and that outside entities have to just augment that value, I think we'll keep growing our ability to get good, quality insights and make better decisions based on that.
Sam, in closing, how do you think technology has impacted the way real estate professionals collect and analyze data, and what tools or platforms do you recommend, if you can recommend any?
So I do not recommend platforms because most of them are our member organizations, and we try to be very
They're all
independent
good.
in that space. Um, I think it's important to look at the new tools that are coming out. As I said, as Brandon knows well, it's hard to change processes when your day to day is keeping a consumer happy with the transaction. That's the most important thing in their life right now.
Mhm.
But the tools that are coming out now from traditional big companies that we've worked with for many years and the ones that are coming from new startup companies are really exciting because we've gotten so much better. We've gotten our technology tuned up to a level now where they can start bringing in new features and new things. And just like this augmentation of data that we're bringing floor plans and 3D tours, all kinds of things that just make the experience better for not just the broker, but for our customers. So it's important to always have our eyes out there on what's coming next, not necessarily breaking our businesses by picking up every new bleeding edge tool that comes out, but being aware of what's there because, folks like to say, AI is not going to replace agents, but agents using AI will replace other agents. And it might be cliche, but the point is there. That has been the progression of the real estate agent and real estate broker over decades, has been more and more efficient companies through technology and processes becoming bigger and bigger players in the space. So we'll definitely see that continue, and the technology will continue making all of the mundane go into the background, so we can focus more on the intelligence and the insights of the agent having that personal relationship with the consumers.
It's a very scary time, and people are trying to figure out what to do in this new world. We've had a lot of um, we've had a lot of litigation. There's still ongoing litigation. There's a lot of changes coming around. There's a lot of people trying to figure out how to move forward. A lot of people trying to hold on to the past. And I think I would tell you that one of the most important parts to keep in mind is a lot of opportunity. So whenever there's change like this, you can look at it from two perspectives of, how do we continue to do things we've been always doing, and then how do we move forward into this new realm. And I think that, a lot of these changes, while scary, some of them are actually going to be very good for agents that are focused on how to make their consumer experience better. And how do you make this thing so it's clear and more understandable for the buyer and seller? You have to remember this, that one of the most important parts about what we do is shepherding somebody through a transaction they're going to do maybe 2 or 3 times in their life. They're not waking up and wanting to do this on their own. They're not like going, hey, I want to sell my house on my own today. They're looking for somebody to help them with that process. So in that understanding, you have to go, what do I need to change in my business? What do I need to adapt to? And then how can we increase our value to show consumers what we do and have them obviously pay what we're worth? And we'll talk a lot about that today, but for one, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to make the industry better. So
And when you think about making the industry better, there's a lot of scared agents though. And I know as far as our membership goes, we've had, I mean, obviously for those of us that have been prepping, knowing August 17th was coming, it came and went, and the world is still it is what it is. But there's a lot of scared agents of not knowing how to navigate this new world. Who do they go to for if they don't have a solid broker to lean on? Like, do they listen to a podcast? Do they like what do they do?
yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot there's a lot of information out there. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not. So I'm sure it's confusing. I would tell everyone to try to look at multiple sources and then look and see what makes sense to you, and also think about things from being in your buyer or seller's shoes. Like just logically look at stuff and go, is this contract fair to them? Is it understandable? Does it make sense? Is it confusing? How are they? How are they when you ask them to pay your fee? Are you explaining to them how that's something that you can potentially have the seller pay? Like you need to be thinking about the process of as these changes come down, what are you doing to help them understand exactly what it is that you're having them sign, the experience of the real estate transaction, how compensation is taken care of, how many days it takes to get them into contract. Like it's just constantly putting yourself in the consumer perspective, I think is the most important part. So much of what we're doing is coming from this defensive spot of trying to keep things the way that they are. And we have to stop doing that. We have to think about how this new process is, because here's the thing. The Department of Justice has been very clear about what they're trying to do. If you haven't read any of these arguments, they want to see commissions decoupled. They're absolutely focused on that path. Plaintiffs' lawyers, exactly the same thing. They want to see a world where the buyer's agent is paid by the buyer and the seller's agent is paid by the seller. That's fundamentally what it is. How we get there is what we're going to be talking a lot about today in the process. But when you think about that decoupling part, the buyer's going, well, I can't afford to pay you. So you have to walk them through that experience. You can talk about how the seller can pay a concession. You can talk about how the seller can pay the buyer's agent's fee through the closing, but you need to educate them on that process. The more education you can get from your association, from your MLS, from industry leaders, reading stuff on the news, you're going to be able to figure out this path. And then obviously today we'll talk about a lot of those details and we'll help people get there too. So
Thanks, James. Brandon?
Yeah, James. First, thanks for taking the time when Tiffany told me you were going to be a guest. I was super excited. I've been listening to some of your stuff out there, and I really enjoy listening to your opinion on things and the way it is. And I think you've been as calling it how it is long before it even happened. So, but we're getting a lot of questions about the best way to articulate value as a buyer's agent from the onset. And I've been training my agents that a solid buyer's presentation is kind of key. What are your thoughts on the best way to sit down with a buyer early on and what to say?
yeah, great question. So the first thing you need to do is treat your buyer exactly the way you treat your seller. Like you're not going to go sit down with a seller and hand him a listing agreement and just say sign. Like that's just not how it works. You're going to do a consult. You're going to talk to them about the products and services you offer. You're going to talk about your value, what the transaction timeline is going to be, how properties are selling, price points. You're going to go through this whole presentation. And the current system that we haven't set it up that way. If you think about the way the current system's been, we haven't sat down and done buyer consults in a long time. And a buyer deserves that. They need to explain to them what this is and the process and the work that's involved and how all this stuff comes together. So again, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. I think this is an incredible opportunity to level up. So when I say treat your buyer the same way you treat your seller, you should have a consult. I agree with you on that, Brandon. It's a presentation. But it needs to go deeper than that. It's not just here's what I do, here's my Rolodex, here's the amount of time. It's also what products and services are you offering that buyer to help make that experience better. So for all the listeners that are on here, this is something that you should be doing right now. And I'm going to give you literally verbatim of how we've trained all of our people in this process. We have a beautiful buyer presentation. If you don't have one, there's Core Present, there's Touch CMA, there's Cloud CMA, there's tons of products out there to create a really gorgeous presentation. Get comfortable with that. Get good at explaining what those things are that you do. Get good at explaining the process, the market, etc. The second thing you need to do is you need to show them how you're going to make their life more convenient. So here's some of the things that we're doing. Number one is second most requested thing by buyers is floor plans. One of the things that most listing agents don't do, provide floor plans. Like, it drives me completely insane. So I'm looking at property all the time. I'm looking at the photos. I don't have any context on how the house is set up. I don't understand how everything's put together. I don't know where the rooms are. Floor plans are essential. So there's a great product called Kubicasa, and you guys can all write this down. It's free. It doesn't cost any money. You can go get Kubicasa. You can literally create a floor plan in 5 minutes. It's a beautiful app on your phone. You walk through the house. It uses LiDAR. It goes through this process. In 24 hours, you can have a floor plan. What we're doing, as an example, is we tell the buyer, if there's a house that you like that doesn't have a floor plan, let me know. I'll go create a floor plan for you on the property so that you can have context to how this property is designed, how it's laid out, so you don't have to spend a bunch of time going there and touring a home you may not like. This is added value. This is increasing the value proposition. So there's number one. Number two, Front Door. Great product. They have an app you can download. You give it to the buyer at the closing and tell them, look, when you own this house, if you have any issues for the first year, pull up your app on Front Door. It's branded to me, and you can get a handyman on the line, and they'll teach you how to use the thermostat. And if there's a problem with the water heater, they'll help diagnose. You don't have to spend any money bringing somebody out. You'll be able to have somebody work with you on these things to understand the features of the home. It's an added value. Home warranty, we all know. We used to do that a lot where we provided it. Look at incorporating that again. Revive Remodel. There's a lot of companies that will give you the ability to look at a property. They'll give you a quote on how much money it would cost to remodel it, and then what the up leg is on value. Every single property that a buyer's looking to purchase, you should be able to give them an analysis on, here's the current state. If you invested $50,000, it could be worth $200,000 more. That's part of their equation on buying a house. All of this is services that I'm adding on top as a buyer's agent that increase my value over somebody else. Because what most buyer's agents are going to do is they're going to go, here's what I do, and here's my people, and then here's all this work that I do, and I'm going to show you properties, and I'm going to write a contract. And it sounds great, but if you think about it, it's like, yeah, okay, like, how much is that worth versus here's all the extra things that I do on top of that. I can 100% tell you, when you approach a buyer that way, it's much easier to ask for the compensation and receive it because you are showing tons of value. That's just some examples. Two others. Great product like homeowner.ai. When the client moves into the property, you got them this house. Now give them a system that they can actually manage the asset. It'll tell them when they need to change their air filters, when you need to get the water heater service. Like, make it so it's not just this timeline of 30 to 90 days when you work with them, but now over the course of home ownership of that property, you're front and center on that experience. That's what we have to be doing. The second thing is sort of related to this. You should be thinking about, I'm going to say something controversial, but it wouldn't be me if I didn't. You should be thinking about levels of service. I want everyone to chew on that for a minute. If I've bought multiple houses in the past, I don't need the same level of service as a first-time home buyer. Let's just call a spade a spade. I understand the process. I'm looking for you to help me find a house, but really handle the paperwork. I think it's smart to create potentially tiers. And it may be that your base tier is just what you do, but you could have a tier for people who have purchased homes in the past who just need a little less work and just more of the paperwork side, bringing stuff together. You could have your standard tier, which is, I do 80 hours worth of work. This is the services I provide. I'm going to do 15 showings. You create that. And here's my point. You could have the Ritz-Carlton tier. So that tier is elevated service. So I'm going to rag on my co-host of my podcast because I can, and he loves me and I love him. He is a brilliant, amazing human being and one of the laziest people I know. And I say that as respectfully as possible. He's the guy that paid a premium when he bought his house to have the agent deal with hackers coming to pack up all of his stuff, people unpacking all of this stuff into his house. He had a freaking person come by that organized the kitchen in the most logical way, where your pots and pans and all your stuff's supposed to be, based upon whether you're right-handed, left-handed, who cooks, who doesn't. Like, the point is, you could create an experience where not only will I help you get the house, I'm going to get you out of the current house into the new house through all of my partners. You mark that up a little bit for the coordination of that service. Landscaper will come take care of it. I've got the gardener. I've got everything all dialed so that you can just write a check and I take care of everything. And I think that's a missed opportunity we're not thinking about. And the reason I say that is two reasons. Number one is people are willing to pay a premium for convenience and service in this country. The greatest example of it is DoorDash. We are lazy as hell that we're willing to spend more money to have the food delivered than the cost of the food itself, because it's convenient for us. People want that. Number two is a really interesting stat that I love. So in 1960, dual income households in the United States was around 30%, where mom and dad both worked in order to make a living. Today, it's almost 60. Really, let that sink in. 60% of Americans have to have a dual income household to make a living in this country. Nobody wakes up and goes, I just want to sell my house on my own, or I just want to buy a house on my own. They want someone to help them with this process. You just have to articulate value. That's the key to this whole thing. So when I talked about opportunity earlier, I love the fact that the seller's agent isn't dictating my compensation, that I'm sitting down now with a buyer rep agreement, a consult, my services, my product offering, and curating an experience for them around what they want and what I provide. And I guarantee you this, good agents will charge more, and agents who can't articulate value will charge less. That's what we're going to see in this new world.
I think there will be a flight to quality here. And I think the agents that are professionals and provide trusted advice, and who, this is a full-time job for, I think for the most part, people will flock to those folks. And it'll be more challenging for folks who approach this from a part-time perspective, and maybe do one or two transactions a year. I think that I expect the flight to quality will be something that we'll see in the next year or two.
And also, I love that you use the word trusted advisor. We just actually launched a consumer campaign focusing on the American dream of home ownership. And in it, we actually didn't even use the word realtor. We actually used the word trusted advisor, and what it looks like to have a community surrounding you. Like, for somebody moving, the example is like somebody moving from another country, and they just want these four walls, the same safe space that all of us want, but they don't know who to turn to. And so it's about community and trusted advisors. And I think having the network of like loan originators, mortgage lenders who do become good friends and family, and then your realtor. I mean, these are the people that are helping you make the largest financial decision of your life and helping guide you in a way. Like, I always want things to be done the right way. I'm like, I don't care how it gets there as long as it's done the right way. And so I think having these advisors is so key. And so everything that you said, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I want to write all of it down.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to the real estate transactions that I've done personally, and I'm in the business. And a couple of years ago, my wife and I sold an apartment in New York. We had never sold a home before,
Right.
and it was in a co-op and had all sorts of wrinkles along the way, like most real estate transactions do. And our listing agent, she knew what was up. She knew
Right.
she knew how to navigate each sticky situation, and we ended up selling for, I think we were like 20 or 25% over asking, which was tremendous for us, like
Right.
hugely important for wealth building, like you talked about. And there's no way I could have navigated, even being at a media company that covers the housing market, knowing the intricacies of co-op law and New York real estate. having somebody to navigate that with who's a professional and has done it tens and hundreds of times over the past number of years, it's so helpful. It's really really helpful.
That's the same for me. Even though I feel like I can, you know, what can do it all on my own, I definitely have always used a realtor because what if I have to negotiate something on an inspection report? I don't want to be in the middle of having to negotiate that. And at the end of the day, it's always worked out. Brandon, do you represent yourself or do you hire do you hire an agent in your office?
It's funny. I've always hired an agent to take care of it. Partially because when I'm selling a home, I don't like to be on the phone with the agent scheduling appointments, and so it takes the personal side out of it, and you have somebody else that's not emotionally attached to the transaction being to help you through it. And so yeah, I always do. And now, luckily, my son's a realtor, so that makes it a little easier to refer it.
He's a
So
fantastic. He's fantastic also.
So, I mean, I too agree with you that I think there's going to be a flight to quality, and the settlement has the potential to make our industry a lot better, more professional and stuff. But what other pull out your crystal ball and what other kinds of things in the future outlook? What are your predictions for the housing market over the next 5 years, and how should professionals maybe prepare for these changes?
5 years is tricky. Just thinking about how much has happened in my 5 year or 6 years at Housing Wire. Um, but I think that there are a couple of trends that will be consistent, right? And that won't go away over the next couple of years. One is there is a huge demographic patch of of millennials and now Gen Z who want to buy homes,
Mhm.
and so there's a lot of potential customers who are getting to home buying age, who are starting families and want to move out of that rental and buy their first home. So I think the number of first-time home buyers and therefore customers for realtors across the country is going to be consistent. I think that demographic patch is going to last for many, many more years, and especially because a lot of those folks had to defer their home buying dreams over the past couple of years just because there was no inventory, right? And home prices went up too much. And so I think over the next couple of years, as we see mortgage rates moderate a little bit and we see more inventory of homes available for sale, it's a huge opportunity. It's a really big opportunity with millennials and Gen Z to sell them their first home, and to get creative where needed to get them into that home. So I think that's a big thing. I think that we've seen several players over the last couple of years, like Zillow, like Open Door, who dip dip their hands into other parts of the transaction. Like Zillow has actually become a decently sized mortgage business over the last year or two. Open Door is still buying and selling a number of properties and doing the full transaction. Right? I think they're partnering with real estate agents and realtors better and more effectively. I think that there's more opportunities for realtors to work with iBuyers like Open Door. But I don't think that that's going to slow down. I think that there will be companies that will continue to try to um, turn this into an end-to-end transaction with either the home seller or the home buyer. Um, but I think what will ultimately win out in the end will continue to be like having two trusted advisors in your transaction. You have your realtor and your loan originator, and they're going to be tech enabled, and so they're going to be able to serve more customers, more home buyers, and more home sellers than ever before because of that technology. So, like, I'm bullish. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and technology is only going to help.
And I think for a lot of the conversations that we have are centered around how do we move that tenant into being a first time home buyer and encouraging that, because obviously there's a place for tenants in everything, but like empowering them to know that they have the, the ability to actually own their own home and maybe pay the same amount towards a mortgage that they would towards a rental. And so I think empowerment is great. And so do you guys report or have any conversations around how you empower that tenant to become a first time home buyer and kind of pathways?
I think that the key there is to have a good understanding of the financing options that are out there. I think most people still think that a 20% down payment is required to buy a home. We know that that's not the case. There are a lot of options out there. There's mortgage insurance, there's down payment assistance, there's FHA loans, there's VA loans for veterans. There's loans coming out of the Department of Agriculture for that are available to certain folks. So having a good understanding of financing options. There's non-qualified mortgages, where you look at people's income and debt coverage ratios. Having a basic understanding of these different options and having really good and trusted mortgage partners, I think it's really, really important for a realtor to know these different ways that you can maneuver a first-time home buyer into a home, and to help them understand that you don't need that 20% down payment. You don't have to wait for that. And what are the ways that you can get around that 20% down payment? I think the realtors that understand that and have good partners who can execute on those different mortgage products, I think that's huge.